The transport ship landed on Prime with a sound like thunder. Dust and smoke rose from the landing pad as the engines cooled down. Soldiers from 12 different planets stood waiting in perfect lines. They wore armor that shone under the three suns of this fortress world. They carried weapons that could cut through steel like paper. They were the best of their species, chosen to train at the most famous military academy in the galaxy. And they were all staring at the human. Park walked down the ramp of the Earth transport alone. He carried a single bag over his shoulder. He wore simple gray clothes with no armor. His black hair moved in the hot wind. He was not tall. He was not wide. His arms were thin compared to the massive creatures around him. His skin was soft and brown, without scales or plates or fur. A warrior named laughed first. His laugh was deep and rumbling, like rocks falling down a mountain. He stood 3 meters tall with 4 muscular arms and green-scaled skin. His people were known across the galaxy as the greatest warriors ever born. "Is this a joke?" asked the alien standing next to him. "Did the humans send us a child?" The laughter spread through the crowd. Soldiers clicked their sharp teeth together in amusement. Their bodies were covered in black armor that grew from their own bones. Tall, thin beings with silver skin whispered to each other and shook their heads. Even the instructors, who stood apart from the cadets, could not hide their smiles. Heard all of it. His face showed nothing. He walked forward with steady steps, his eyes fixed on the main building ahead. He had expected this. His commanders back on Earth had warned him. The galaxy did not respect humans. To them, Earth was a small, young world with weak creatures who had only discovered space travel 200 years ago. What the galaxy did not know was that those 200 years had not been peaceful. Humans had fought each other with terrible weapons. They had survived wars that burned entire cities. They had learned to kill in ways that would make even the feel sick. And through all of that blood and fire, they had learned one important truth. The strongest creature does not always win, the one does. Instructor met at the entrance. Was a reptilian being with yellow eyes and a face covered in old scars. He had fought in 40 different wars and killed more enemies than he could count. He looked down at the human like a giant looking at an insect. Earth Representative Park said, reading from a data screen. "You are assigned to training Cohort 7. Behind, several aliens laughed again. Cohort 7 was the lowest group. It was where they put species that could not fight. Diplomats, observers, beings that were there only to watch and learn, never to participate in real combat. "I understand," said. His voice was calm and clear. Waited for more. He expected the human to argue, to demand better treatment, to show some emotion. Just stood there, waiting. "Your quarters are in Section 9, finally said. "Training begins tomorrow at first sun. Do not be late." Bowed his head slightly and walked inside. The academy was enormous. Its halls were built for beings much larger than humans. Had to take 3 steps for every 1 step a normal cadet would take. The walls were covered with the names of great warriors, written in 100 different languages. None of them were human names. His quarters were small. A bed that was too big, a desk that was too high, a window that looked out at the red sky of Prime. Put his bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. He did not feel sorry for himself. He did not feel angry. He felt focused. From his bag, he took out a small book. It was old, with yellow pages and a worn cover. It had belonged to his grandfather, who had been a soldier in a war long before he was born. Inside the book were drawings and notes about survival, hunting, and combat. Not the combat of laser rifles and plasma swords. The old combat. The original combat. How to track an animal through a forest. How to build a trap with nothing but rope and sticks. How to wait for hours without moving, until the perfect moment to strike. His grandfather had taught him that humans were never the strongest animals on Earth. They were not the fastest. They did not have sharp claws or thick skin, but they had conquered their world anyway. They had hunted creatures 10 times their size. They had survived ice ages and famines and disasters that killed millions of other species. They did it by thinking, by planning, by refusing to give up. Read his grandfather's notes until the suns went down and the room grew dark. Then he put the book away and began to exercise. Not the exercises the aliens would recognize. Not lifting heavy things or running fast. He stretched his muscles slowly, carefully. He practiced breathing. He moved through positions that humans had developed over thousands of years, designed to make the body flexible and the mind sharp. In the mess hall that night, he sat alone. The food was strange, but he ate it without complaint. Around him, alien cadets talked and laughed and showed off their strength. Was the center of attention, telling stories about hunts on his home world. I killed my first beast when I was only 10 years old, boasted. It was twice my size. I broke its neck with my bare hands. His friends cheered and slammed their fists on the table, then noticed sitting in the corner. Look, said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. The earth creature is still alive. I thought it might die just from breathing our air. More laughter filled the hall. Stood up and walked towards table. His forearms were crossed over his massive chest. His yellow eyes looked down at the human with complete contempt. Tell me, little one said, why are you here? Your species has nothing to offer. You cannot fight. You cannot hunt. You are weak and slow and soft. What could you possibly learn at this academy that would help you? Looked up from his food. His face was still calm. His eyes met without fear. I am here to learn, said simply. Laughed, learn what? How to die faster? No, replied. I am here to learn about all of you. Something in his voice made his laugh fade. For just a moment, the giant alien felt something strange. It was not fear exactly. It was more like the feeling a predator gets when it realizes it is not alone in the dark. But the feeling passed quickly, snorted and walked away, returning to his friends. Finished his meal in silence. Then he returned to his quarters and slept. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. And Park, the small, soft, weak human from Earth, would show the galaxy something it had forgotten. The most dangerous creature is not the one with the biggest teeth. It is the one that never stops thinking. The hunt of verification was the Academy's oldest tradition. For 500 years, every cadet had faced this test. They were dropped alone into the death jungles of Prime's southern lands. They had 72 hours to survive, find the extraction point, and if possible, kill one of the jungle's deadly beasts. Many cadets died. Many more gave up and called for rescue. Only the strongest completed the trial with honor. Stood with the other cadets at the drop zone. The morning was hot and the air smelled like metal and rotting plants. Instructor walked down the line, handing each cadet their equipment. A knife, a locator beacon, nothing else. The jungle will test you, said. His voice was hard and cold. It does not care how strong you think you are. It does not care about your rank or your family name. It only cares about one thing. Can you survive? When reached, he paused. The reptilian instructor looked at the small human and shook his head slowly. We have never lost an entire species in the hunt, said quietly, so only could hear. Try not to make history. Took the knife and beacon without answering. They took the cadets to different parts of the jungle. They were spread out over hundreds of kilometers. Each one was alone. Each one had to find their own way. Left him on a rocky hill overlooking a sea of dark green trees. The plants here were not like Earth plants. They moved. They reached. Some of them ate meat. The sounds coming from below were terrible, screaming animals, breaking branches, the wet noise of things being eaten. He did not move. For 12 hours, sat on that hill and watched. He saw the patterns in the jungle. He watched where animals went to drink water. He learned which plants were dangerous and which were safe. He studied the paths that predators used to hunt. Back at the academy, the proctors watched the cadets through their locator signals. Most signals moved quickly through the jungle, had already killed 2 beasts and was heading toward the extraction point. Other cadets were fighting, running, surviving. Signal had not moved. Perhaps he is dead, one proctor said. No, another replied. His life signs are normal. He is just sitting there. High Commander Seraph sat in her observation chair above the monitoring room. She was the most respected hunter in the galaxy. Her silver-white hair fell past her shoulders. Her face was covered in ceremonial scars that told the story of 100 victories. She had lived for over 400 years and had seen things that would break most minds. She said nothing, but her eyes never left Signal. On hour 13, finally moved, but he did not go toward the extraction point. He went deeper into the jungle, toward the most dangerous area on the map. What is he doing? A proctor asked. Seraph leaned forward slightly. He is hunting. moved through the jungle like a ghost. He made no sound. He left no trail. The aliens thought humans were clumsy and loud, but that was because they had only seen humans in cities and ships. They had never seen a human in the wild. They did not know that for millions of years, humans had been the most successful hunters on Earth. Not because they were strong, because they were patient. He found what he was looking for near a stream, a thornback. It was one of the most dangerous creatures on Prime. 6 legs, armor plates covering its body, a tail covered in poisonous spines. Cadets were told to run if they saw one. In 40 years, no cadet had killed a thornback. Watched it for 3 hours. He learned how it moved. He learned where its armor was weak. He learned that it was blind in bright light but could hear the smallest sound. Then he set his trap. Using vines and branches, he built a simple snare. The same kind of snare his grandfather had taught him to build when he was a boy. He covered it with leaves and dirt. Then he found a small animal, killed it quickly, and left its body near the trap. Then he waited. The thornback came at night. It smelled the blood and moved toward the dead animal. Its 6 legs stepped carefully through the jungle. It was a perfect predator, designed by evolution to kill anything it wanted. It never saw the trap. The snare caught its front legs. The creature roared and thrashed, but had tied the vines to heavy rocks that kept it from pulling free. Before it could break loose, dropped from a tree above it. His knife found the soft spot behind its head, where the armor plates did not meet. One strike, perfect aim. The thornback died without touching him. Sat next to the body and caught his breath. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from focus. Every part of his mind had been working at full power for hours. Now he could finally rest. But he was not done. Over the next 2 days, killed 6 more beasts. He did not fight them with strength. He fought them with traps, with tricks, with patience. He learned each creature's weakness and used it against them. Some he caught in pits. Some he led into natural dangers. One he killed by waiting inside its own cave until it fell asleep. On hour 36 found him. The warrior had been traveling toward the extraction point when he saw smoke. He followed it and found in a small clearing, cooking meat over a fire. Around him lay the bodies of 4 dead predators. Their teeth and claws were already collected as trophies. Stopped walking. His 4 arms hung loose at his sides. His yellow eyes were wide. How? The word came out as a whisper. Looked up from his cooking. How what? How did you kill these? The thornback alone should have ripped you apart. You have no armor, no strength, no weapons except that tiny knife. Thought about the question. Then he pointed to a dead beast on his left. That one was faster than me, but it could not change direction quickly. I made it chase me through tight spaces until it crashed into a rock. He pointed to another body. That one was stronger than me, but it was also stupid. It attacked anything that moved. I made a decoy from branches and leaves. While it was killing the decoy, I killed it. He pointed to the thornback. That one was perfect. Armor, poison, speed, strength. But it could not see in bright light, so I waited until morning and attacked when the sun was in its eyes. Stood in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. The mockery was gone. You did not fight them at all, said slowly. You made them fight themselves. Nodded. Everything has a weakness, even the strongest creature in the universe. You just have to find it. Looked at the small human. For the first time, he did not see a weak little being from a weak little planet. He saw something else, something he did not have a word for. I will see you at the extraction point, said. Then he turned and walked into the jungle. Finished his meal. Then he gathered his trophies and began the journey to the extraction point. He arrived 9 hours before any other cadet. He was not tired. He was not injured. He was not afraid. He was ready for whatever came next. And somewhere in the monitoring room, High Commander Seraph smiled for the first time in 10 years. She had found something she thought was lost forever. A true hunter. The ceremony hall was the largest room in the academy. Its ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Its walls were covered with gold and silver plates, each one showing the face of a great warrior from history. Thousands of cadets and instructors filled the space, standing in perfect rows according to their rank and species. No one spoke, no one moved, they were all waiting. The hunt of verification had ended 6 hours ago. The results had spread through the academy like fire. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew about the human who had done the impossible, but no one could believe it until they saw it with their own eyes. The great doors opened. Park walked into the hall alone. He wore the same simple gray clothes from his first day. He carried a bag over his shoulder that was heavy with trophies. His face showed nothing. His steps were steady and calm. Behind him, 2 workers carried the Thornback's body on a metal platform. Its armor plates gleamed under the ceremony lights. Its poisonous tail dragged on the floor. Even dead, it was terrifying. A low sound moved through the crowd. It was not quite a gasp. It was more like the sound of thousands of beings taking a breath at the same time. Walked to the center of the hall and stopped. He put down his bag, then he waited. From the high platform at the front of the hall, High Commander Seraph rose from her throne. She had not stood during a naming ceremony in over 10 years. She had not walked down to the main floor in over 20. But now her old legs carried her down the stone steps, one at a time, while the entire hall watched in shocked silence. She stopped in front of him. She was taller than him by half a meter. Her silver-white hair flowed around her shoulders like water. Her ceremonial scars seemed to glow in the dim light. Her eyes, which had seen the birth and death of empires, looked down at the small human from Earth. "You completed the hunt of verification in 61 hours, she said. Her voice filled the hall without effort. 9 hours faster than the second-place finisher. You claimed trophies from 7 apex predators, including a thornback that had not been killed by a cadet in 40 years. She paused. The silence was so complete that could hear his own heartbeat. "You did this without armor, without advanced weapons, without the natural gifts that every other species in this hall possesses." Seraph reached down and picked up one of the trophies from his bag. It was a fang from the thornback, longer than her forearm and still stained with venom. "Tell me," she said, "how did you do this?" Every being in the hall leaned forward to hear the answer. Looked up at the High Commander. He was not afraid of her. He was not intimidated by her age or her power. On Earth, he had learned to look his enemies in the eye. He had learned that fear was a choice. "I watched," he said simply. "I waited, I learned, and then I acted." Seraph held his gaze for a long moment. Then she did something that made the entire hall gasp out loud. She laughed. It was not a mocking laugh. It was not a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just heard the truest thing they had ever heard. It was the laugh of someone who had just found something precious that they thought was lost forever. "Do you know why I am called the High Commander?" Seraph asked. Shook his head. "Because I have lived for 400 years. I have fought in more wars than you can imagine. I have killed creatures that would make your nightmares seem peaceful. And in all that time, I learned one truth that every warrior eventually forgets." She leaned closer too. "The greatest hunter is not the one with the sharpest claws. It is the one who understands that strength is not enough. That speed is not enough. That power is not enough. The greatest hunter is the one who thinks, who plans, who waits for the perfect moment and strikes with perfect precision." She stood up straight and turned to face the crowd. "My people have forgotten this truth. They have forgotten it. They have forgotten it. Every species in this hall has become so proud of their natural gifts that they have stopped thinking. They charge into battle like animals. They rely on strength alone, and they die because of it." She turned back too. "But you remember. Your entire species remembers, because you never had the luxury of strength. You never had natural armor or poison or speed. You had to think. You had to plan. You had to become clever just to survive." From inside her ceremonial robes, she pulled out a pendant. It was made of black metal and red stone. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. When the aliens in the crowd saw it, many of them fell to their knees. "This is the mark," Seraph said. "It has not been given to anyone in over 200 years. It is the highest honor a hunter can receive. It means that the one who wears it is more than a warrior. They are a symbol, a teacher, a reminder of what we should all try to be." She placed the pendant around his neck. "I name you Eth," she declared. Her voice echoed off the walls and ceiling. "In the old tongue, this means champion of war, not because you have won battles, not because you are strong, But because you understand what battle truly is, you understand that the mind is the greatest weapon. You understand that patience is more deadly than anger. You understand that the smallest hunter can defeat the largest prey. She stepped back and raised her voice even louder. Let every being in this hall remember this moment. Let every species in this galaxy know what happened here today. A human, from a small planet at the edge of known space, has reminded us of the truth we forgot. He has earned his place among the greatest hunters who ever lived. Was the first to kneel. He dropped to all four knees and bowed his head, his forearms pressed against the floor in the deepest sign of respect his people knew. One by one, every cadet in the hall followed. Warriors, soldiers, silver-skinned beings, creatures with tentacles and creatures with wings. All of them knelt before the small human from Earth. Stood in the center of them all. His face was still calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. High Commander Seraph noticed. She leaned close to him and spoke quietly, so only he could hear. You are not shaking from fear, she said. You are shaking because you understand what just happened. You understand the weight that has been placed on your shoulders. Nodded slowly. They will expect me to be perfect now. They will expect me to never fail. Seraph smiled. It was a sad smile full of old memories. Yes, she said. That is the price of being a champion, but I believe you can carry it. I believe you are exactly what this galaxy needs. She stepped back and raised her voice again. Rise, all of you. The ceremony is complete. Return to your duties and remember what you saw today. Remember the champion of war. The crowd rose and began to leave, but many of them looked back at as they walked out. Their eyes were different now. The mockery was gone. The laughter was gone. In its place was something new. Respect, wonder, and just a little bit of fear. Stood alone in the center of the empty hall. The mark of hung heavy around his neck. The Thornback's body still lay behind him. He had come to this academy as a joke, a weak little creature from a weak little planet. Now he was something else entirely. Now he was the champion of war. And his journey was only beginning. 3 years changed everything. Was no longer a cadet. He was now a tactical advisor to the Dominion's 7th Fleet. His name was known in 12-star systems. Stories about him were told in training academies across the galaxy. The human who killed a Thornback. The human who earned the mark of the champion of war. But did not think about any of that. He thought only about the mission in front of him. The 7th Fleet was stationed near the border of known space, protecting supply routes and watching for threats. Its commander was Admiral, one of the few other humans in galactic military service. She was tall for a human woman, with sharp eyes and a voice that could cut through steel. She had fought her way up through the ranks, earning respect through blood and sweat and sacrifice. She and often ate dinner together in her private quarters. It was the only time either of them could speak freely. They treat you like a weapon, said one evening, looking out the window at the stars. They think your victories came from some special human trick. They do not understand. Sipped his tea. What do you think they do not understand? You are not a weapon, you are a mirror. When you fight, you show other species what they have lost. The patience, the cleverness, the willingness to be underestimated. She turned to face him. They are afraid of what they see when they look at you. They are afraid that they have become weak without knowing it. Before could answer, the alarm started screaming. Red lights filled every corridor of the flagship. Crew members ran to their stations. The ship's computer announced the emergency in a cold, calm voice. Alert, alert. Hostile forces detected at station. All combat personnel report to battle stations. And reach the command bridge in minutes. The main screen showed the situation. Station was a massive supply hub, filled with food and fuel and equipment for 100 different worlds. Now it was surrounded by enemy ships. The Hollow had awakened. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Hollow. They were machine creatures built by a civilization that had died millions of years ago. They had slept in the dark spaces between stars, waiting. Now they were awake, and they were hungry. 247 Hollow ships surrounded Station. They were black and sharp like insects made of metal. Their weapons could cut through any armor. Their shields could stop any attack. They did not feel fear. They did not feel pain. They existed only to destroy. The 7th Fleet had 31 ships. "We must retreat," said the fleet's second commander, a general named. "The numbers are impossible. If we attack, we will all die." Other officers agreed. The mathematics were clear. 31 ships could not defeat 247 ships. Even the bravest warrior knew when to run. Admiral looked at, "What do you see?" Studied the tactical display. His eyes moved over every detail. The positions of the hollow ships, the debris field nearby, the energy signatures from station, the pattern of how the machines moved and communicated. For 7 minutes, no one spoke. They all watched the human think, then smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but everyone on the bridge felt a chill run down their spine. "We do not retreat," said, "and we do not attack directly." He walked to the tactical display and began to explain his plan. The hollow ships were connected. They shared information through energy signals. When one ship saw something, all ships knew it. This made them strong, but it was also a weakness. If those signals were disrupted, the ships would become confused. They would lose their coordination. They would become 247 individual enemies instead of one unified force. Pointed to 3 cargo freighters in the fleet. "We overload their engines and send them into the center of the hollow formation. When they explode, the energy pulse will disrupt the enemy signals for at least 90 seconds. 90 seconds, shook his head. "That is nothing. We cannot destroy 200 ships in 90 seconds. "We do not need to destroy them," replied. "We need to scatter them." He pointed to the debris field near station. Millions of rocks and broken ships floated there, left over from a battle fought centuries ago. "We send our smallest, fastest ships to attack the hollow formation. Not to destroy them, just to make them angry, make them chase. Lead them into the debris field where their size becomes a problem. They will crash into each other. They will hit rocks. Their formation will break apart." "And then," asked, pointed to the main fleet. "Our warships hide behind the largest asteroids, like predators waiting for prey. When the hollow formation breaks, we strike. Not at all of them, just at the command ships. Cut off the head and the body dies." The bridge was silent. Every officer stared at the plan like it was written in a language they did not understand. "This is not war," said slowly. "This is trickery. This is hiding and running and waiting. Warriors do not fight like this." Admiral stood up. Her voice was hard and sharp. "No, this is human war, and it is how we have won every impossible battle in our history." She turned to the crew. "You heard the champion of war. Begin the operation." The battle lasted 9 hours. It happened exactly as had predicted. The cargo freighters exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The hollow signals scrambled. The small ships led the machines into the debris field, where they crashed and burned and broke apart. And when the formation was finally scattered, the Dominion warships emerged from their hiding spots and struck with everything they had. The hollow command ships were destroyed in minutes. Without their guidance, the other machines became stupid and slow. They fired at random. They hit each other as often as they hit the enemy. When the battle ended, the 7th Fleet had lost 11 ships. The hollow had lost 247. Stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the machine wreckage drift past the windows. His face was tired but calm. Around him, officers and crew members moved with new energy. They had won. They had done the impossible. Came to stand beside him. In 3 years, the warrior had become his friend and most loyal supporter. He had served on the 7th Fleet for 2 years now, learning everything the human could teach him. "I understand now," said quietly, "why the High Commander gave you that name." Looked at his friend. "Because I am clever." "No," his voice was heavy with emotion. "Because you make us more. When we fight alongside you, we remember things we had forgotten. We remember that strength is not enough. That pride can be poison. That the smallest blade placed correctly can bring down the largest beast." He placed one of his 4 hands on shoulder. "You do not just win battles. You teach us how to be better warriors, better hunters, better beings." Said nothing, but he felt the weight of his words. He was no longer just the champion of war. He was becoming something else entirely. He was becoming a legend. 10 years after leaving Earth, Park finally returned. His shuttle descended through the clouds over Korea. Through the window, he could see the green mountains and blue rivers of his homeland. He could see the cities that spread across the valleys like silver and glass. He could see the ocean where he had swam as a child before the stars had called him away. But was not looking at any of this. He was looking at the sky behind him. 47 warships hung in the atmosphere above Earth. They came from 11 different species. Battle cruisers with their curved hulls, assault carriers with their sharp edges, silver ships from the pale ones, living ships from the deep swimmers. Every major civilization in the galaxy had sent their finest vessels. They had all come to honor one human. The news had spread across Earth for weeks. Governments had argued about what it meant. Scientists had studied the alien ships with fear and wonder. Regular people had simply stood outside and looked up at the sky, trying to understand how one man from their world had changed the entire galaxy. Shuttle landed in Seoul, in a park that had been cleared for the occasion. Soldiers in dress uniforms lined both sides of the path. Camera drones filled the air. Millions of people watched through their screens. He walked down the ramp alone. He wore a simple black suit, the mark of hung around his neck glowing faintly in the afternoon sun. His black hair was shorter now, with threads of gray near his temples. His face had new lines from years of war and worry, but his eyes were the same, calm, focused, seeing everything. A group of people waited at the end of the path. World leaders, military commanders, scientists, journalists, but saw only two faces in the crowd. His mother, Park, stood in the front row. She was older now, her black hair gone completely white. Tears ran down her wrinkled face, but she was smiling. She had not seen her son in 10 years. She had only known him through video messages and news reports. His sister, Park, stood beside their mother. She held a photograph against her chest. It was a picture of their father, Park, who had died 3 years ago. He had been so proud of his son. He had watched every report, collected every article, told everyone he met about the champion of war. He had died peacefully in his sleep, still waiting for the day his son would come home. Walked straight to them. He ignored the leaders and the cameras and the crowds. He took his mother in his arms and held her while she cried. He kissed his sister's forehead and touched the photograph of his father. "I am sorry I was not here," he said quietly. Pulled back and looked at her son with fierce pride. "Your father understood. He always understood. He said you were doing what you were born to do." Handed him the photograph. "He wanted you to have this. He said you should remember where you came from. Remember that you are still human, no matter what name the galaxy gives you." Took the photograph and looked at his father's face for a long moment. Then he carefully placed it in his pocket, next to his heart. The ceremony was held in a building constructed just for this event. It was enormous, filled with thousands of seats for humans and aliens alike. High Commander Seraph sat in a place of honor at the front. She was ancient now, so old that she had to be carried on a floating platform. But her eyes were still sharp. Her mind was still clear. She had made this journey across the stars despite her failing health. When asked why, she had given an answer that would be remembered forever. "Humanity sent us one soldier, and he changed how we understand war. He did not do this through force. He did this by being human. Now I wish to see the world that created him. I wish to understand how a species so young, so fragile, so alone on their single blue world learned to think the way he thinks." When it was time for to speak, he walked to the center of the stage. The lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent. Billions of people across Earth and beyond watched through their screens. Stood still for a long moment, looking out at the gathered humans and aliens. "I was told," he began, his voice calm and clear, "that I was too small, too soft, too weak, that humans had nothing to offer the great civilizations of the galaxy." He paused. They were right. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The aliens looked at each other in surprise. Even Seraph raised an eyebrow. "We are small," continued. "We are soft. We live for the blink of an eye compared to beings who measure their lives in centuries. We have no natural weapons, no armor, no venom, no wings, no extra limbs. By every measure the galaxy uses, we are weak." He smiled. It was a real smile, full of warmth and truth. "But we have this," he tapped his temple, "and this." He placed his hand over his heart. We look at impossible situations and refuse to accept them. We watch stronger creatures and learn how to make their strength useless. We survive not because we are the best, but because we adapt. We change. We grow. We never ever give up. He turned to face the alien delegation. You came here to understand us. I will tell you our secret, though you may not believe it. The hall was completely silent. Every being leaned forward to hear. We are afraid, every moment, of everything, the dark, the cold, each other, the vast emptiness between stars. His voice dropped to something almost gentle. And we have learned to make our fear into fuel. Every human achievement, every invention, every artwork, every act of courage is born from the terror of a small creature refusing to die quietly. High Commander Seraph slowly rose from her platform. The effort was visible on her face, but her voice remained strong and clear. Then I name your species as I named you, Park. From this day forward, in the records of the Dominion, in the songs of in the memory cores of every civilization that joins our alliance, humanity shall be known as Ethsiora, the champions of war. She bowed. It was a deep bow, full of respect and honor. She had not bowed to anyone in 300 years. Not because you are the strongest, she said, but because you taught the strong how to be wise. The hall erupted in applause. Humans and aliens rose to their feet together. The sound was deafening. It rolled out through the doors and into the streets, where millions more people were watching and listening. That night walked through the streets of Seoul with his mother and sister. The crowds had thinned, but people still recognized him. They bowed, they waved, they called out words of thanks and praise, but did not feel like a hero. He felt like a son who had missed too many years, like a brother who had not been there when he was needed, like a human who had almost forgotten what it meant to be human. They stopped at a small restaurant that their family had visited when was a child. The owner recognized them and gave them a private room. They ate simple food and talked about simple things, childhood memories, family jokes, the neighbor's new dog. For a few hours was not the champion of war. He was just a man who had come home. Later, when his mother and sister had gone to sleep, stood on the roof of their family home and looked up at the sky. The alien ships were still there, their lights twinkling among the stars. Somewhere up there, beings from 100 worlds were watching Earth with new eyes. He took out the photograph of his father and looked at it one more time. I made it home, Father, he said quietly. I kept my promise. The wind blew gently across the rooftop. The stars shone bright and cold. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new story was being told. The story of a small, soft, fragile species that had taught the universe how to be strong. The story of humanity. The champions of war.